Hello, good afternoon. It's Graham Coath with another My Music. Today I'm going to be speaking to Dan Whitehouse about his life in music and his new album. First, a little bit of this. I need to get going, Mel. See you later.
For the advert, it looks like a good stand.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and musicians use it, because it gets up high enough. That's the thing. So, Dan, where are you coming from today?
I'm speaking to you from Wolverhampton, in the heart of the Black Country. It's really sunny. It's beautiful.
It's absolutely gorgeous down here in Somerset as well. So we're having at last a little bit of heat over in the UK, which is a good thing. So talk to me about where music started for you. When did you first start listening to music?
Well, just a short walk from here, Wolverhampton Civic Hall in 1989. I saw Chuck Berry play. He was 66 years old. Wow. I was 10 years old, and he lit a fire that's still burning, basically. Yeah, my parents were big music fans and took me to shows from a young age. I was very lucky in that way. My dad was a radio DJ. House was full of 7-inch records, early Beatles, Stones, that sort of 60s R&B stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the soulful singing from that era is, so passionate and expressive. Still some of my favorite stuff. That was where guitar playing started for me.
That's a real gig to go to as a sort of opening memory, isn't it? Chuck Berry. Compared with a lot of people would have said contemporaries from their time, but that's iconic status.
We can balance it out a little, Graham.
Okay.
The first record I bought was Rick Astley's "Never Gonna Give You Up."
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, is there? It's it still chimes along as a great pop record, doesn't it?
Absolutely, good writing. Yeah.
Has that always been on your radar as well? That kind of immediacy with music?
Yeah, I think there's a real art to that, isn't it? That word you just used, immediacy. Music that can connect with the everyday moments. Music that's immediate and bright, kind of like a flower in bloom.
Yeah.
I love that. I love it when it's done tastefully.
Yeah. I know that there can be a lot of it that's not done tastefully, and we can immediately put that in the bin as well, can't we? You talked about your family there, but what about groups of friends? Were they influential in terms of what you were listening to?
Absolutely. My first band at school was called Oblivion, and then it wasn't too long before I was involved with the local music studio, Magic Garden, and the legendary producer there, Gavin Monaghan, and we'd all flock to Gavin's to record our new demos. And there was Brumbeat magazine. There was quite a grassroots music scene around the West Midlands. Well, there still is, but it's something that, as a teenager, I was kind of embedded in. Yeah. Friends, we'd organize our own shows at bars. We did residencies at pubs and stuff, and then we'd all go out together to nightclubs after and stuff. It was a great time.
Do you still trying to keep that kind of grassroots thing going as well?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the way with folk music, isn't it? It's very much people, sharing stories and community-based events. And yeah, I often play it. I've done everything from sort of house gigs to theatre tours, and everything in between. So
yeah. You say folk music, but actually, someone listening to you might say, "Well, is he folk?" Because there is an element of your music which is embedded in the storytelling, and that element of folk. And there's the guitar in there as well, but there's a modern electronic vibe to your music as well. Yeah. So I mean, what do you get any criticism from the folk world for that, from any particular sectors, or do you find that translates over into the folk arena full stop?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if I got some criticism in that regard. Nothing direct, no interesting stories to share, unfortunately, on that. I'm sure there's people like to talk, don't they? But I did mean, you were spot on in your description of the storytelling element, and that's what I was referring to when I used the word folk. And in that sense, you know, most music is all music is folk music in a way.
Where do you go? Where's your inspiration for those stories? Where do you go looking for those stories? Do they come to you through? Do you specifically go looking for them, or they just come to you through sort of everyday life, or are you actually interested, as is folk, in terms of sort of the stories that get handed down as well?
I do specifically go looking for them. I use a lot of newspaper articles. For example, I've got a song called Close Up, which is the story of a Syrian refugee called Hani, who was a photographer, and his photos got picked up by international media, and Channel 4 made a documentary about him and his family's journey. And he had this debilitating eye condition where he couldn't see anything unless it was less than about 10 centimeters in front of his face. But ironically, it was that condition that highlighted the plight of his family to the Canadian authorities, and they plucked the family out of the camp in Lebanon and tried to use modern technology to save his sight, which ultimately didn't prevail. But in the process of all that, his family were rehoused. So
it achieved a big goal in a way. Even though the initial
bittersweet. I was really moved by that story, and you know, similar stories I've dug out through newspapers, through the internet, and then I'll sort of keep an archive of things that I find interesting, and then when I have songwriting sessions, I might open up that archive, and because I found that I reached a certain point in my life where I got bored of my own truths, and telling them in a certain direct fashion anyway. And I found that your own truth actually often comes out through the stories of others, because in many ways we're all kind of interconnected and everybody's faced challenges and hurdles.
When you say you got bored of your own truths, what in terms of, you just got bored of your own voice there, or you felt that you weren't necessarily in a position to say certain things, and maybe by telling the stories of other people that actually that told it better? Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, it was that what you just said is part, you know, it's what you just said is spot on. I mean, but by looking at other people's journeys and life experiences, you gain a more interesting perspective on your own. And it's often about changing perspective is key to writing something interesting, I think.
Now, when I was talking to your management, they said to me, "Oh, you're interested in health and well-being. So is our friend Dan." So where did the health and well-being thing start for you? Where did that start to resonate with you?
I think I really got into that stuff in 2020 during lockdown. I was out in Japan and had an accident to my left ear, which rendered me deaf in my left ear and unfit to fly. So I stayed in Japan for 18 months when it was supposed to be 3 months originally. And obviously I wasn't playing shows, which has been my main thing that's occupied my time and, you know, my job, I guess you could call it that, for the last 15 years. And And so I got into daily creative practices, and I started doing yoga daily with these videos online. I started with Asana Rebel app, and then I moved on to the yoga with Adrienne, and I found it to be really life-changing. I can't really speak highly enough about it. It's sometimes I do it twice a day now.
Yeah.
And
what was it doing? What was it doing for you that was missing before, other than the actual exercise?
It's that taking a breather, it's the mindfulness, it's the pressing pause, it's sort of taking stock on the day and allowing yourself to reflect before you take your next step in whatever it is that you're engaged with. It's really
Do you think that was the big opportunity for the world during the pandemic? I mean, no one would wish another pandemic on anybody, but at the same time, as people now start to talk about the pandemic experience, I have lots of conversations on a day-to-day basis with people that say, well, actually, looking back, although there was all of the bad elements of the pandemic, it's really done my life good. The fact that it stopped us all in our tracks and said, to all of us, now you've got an opportunity here to reevaluate what everything is about. do you think, as a sort of global thing, do you think it actually achieved that for lots of people?
I do, and I love the language you're using there, like all of us, and it stopped us in our tracks, and it's something about that being in it together, wasn't it? It felt like we were all on the same ship all of a sudden. Well, we always are, but this was a reminder of our codependency and the way we're interrelated. And sometimes it felt like before the pandemic, we only got close to that at December with the kind of Christmas spirit, where you might let somebody else go in front of you in the queue, or sharing parking tickets, these sort of random acts of kindness with strangers. I guess that's...
there's an argument to say as well that, I mean, musicians have been experiencing that potentially all the time over years when they play live. That communal gathering, everybody kind of lifting up in song together.
That's our currency, right? They were good at that.
Yeah, that's right. And then and it's strange in a way that went missing, and those sort of spotlight moments that people would save up for and go to for all year round. I'll go to that gig, I'll go to this gig, I'll listen to this person. That disappeared, but there was a sense of a massive, being together and oneness again. And yet now what we're doing is we're going back to everything like that. But hopefully for some people, with a sense of remembering we went through that, and certain things have to change. And it's really, I see this going in lots of different waves. I see it that, you kind of get this. We had this rush out of, certainly in the UK, we had this kind of rush out of lockdown where everybody went a little bit crazy, and we're still seeing some of that in terms of activity. But there's elements still where I'm seeing people just stop again and take stock and go, we don't necessarily have to do that. Just someone posted yesterday on social media that they would have loved to have gone to a conference that's on the other side of the world. They would have loved to have been there in person, but they just stopped and thought, do I actually need to do it? I couldn't do it in the pandemic. Should I be doing it now just because I can do it? no, maybe not, because what's part of this about? Part of this is about, well, do we really need to put another plane in the sky? Do I really need to leave my family and friends for a week to go off and do that? Actually, and people are beginning to weigh things up.
Asking ourselves what's really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Reprioritizing.
And how much of that is kind of fodder for what you want to write about as well?
Yeah, I've written on these topics for sure. I have this new record, The Glass Age, which is a reference to how we live in our lives through the glass, through the screens. It's as if we've adopted these devices, these laptops and iPads, as almost part of the family. The way we feel about each other hasn't changed, but the way we communicate it has. What I like about all these things is it does make you more explicit sometimes with your affirmations of love for loved ones and stuff, because you have to be a bit more direct and explicit in messages. And
well, that's an interesting point, because actually some people would counter argue that and say, well, but actually, you put two people in a room and they converse via their phones as opposed to directly. There's that old thing about a couple sitting on a sofa, one at one end, one at the other. Yeah, I love you. Yeah, I love you, but I love you too. As opposed to looking at each other, holding each other's hand, actually, taking time together. It's a difficult dichotomy, isn't it? Really, I agree with you. On the one hand, there's some barriers that are certainly starting to break down in society, which are great. If you look at the work culture, for example, the fact that people are becoming much more prone to actually talking openly about how they feel, expressing. People do much better on social media, for example, if they actually talk about their failure and what they've learned from their failure, as much as they used to talk about I'm really good at this and I'm really good at that, and it's all behind a facade. Now it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay. I mean, I watched earlier an interview that Stephen Bartlett did with James from Brewdog, and Brewdog came under massive criticism in the middle of the pandemic because of the way they treated certain staff, etc. And him talking about, I made a lot of mistakes and I've really had to reevaluate my position as a leader and how I treat leadership. And that's great. It's great that people that are on top are putting themselves in a vulnerable position. And it's probably why we've just lost a prime minister. But because certain people don't do that. But there's that side of things, but then it's kind of balanced by potentially the lack of time that we give each other sometimes because of technology. Do you see it as that balance going on, that fight going on?
Yeah, there's no replacement for a real face-to-face, is there?
No.
And we found that with the return to live shows, it's been a reminder of just how intense and beautiful that exchange can be, both performing and being in the audience.
You can see that in terms of some of the live streams that have been on TV recently. We've just had Glastonbury, obviously, and you could see all of the performances from there, and the crowds absolutely, singing on way after the artist has finished. You can see the need for the exchange, which is an amazing thing. So what other subjects do you touch on the album?
Well, There's a song on the record called Thin Blue Line, which, as I was mentioning earlier, this one came from a newspaper article, one of the articles I found. There was the headline was something like the graveyard of Antarctica. And sadly, many people that go on expeditions and adventures out there never return. And in this article, there are lots of stories of people who'd been on a journey, and apparently you always get a thin blue line in the ice when there's a big void below. But if you're traveling just a little too quickly in your Jeep, or if you're too engrossed in your journey, you'll miss the warning sign, and then every chance that you'll travel across ice that's way too thin. And I just thought that was a great metaphor for the journeys that we take in our lives, how often there are warning signs, but we just don't take the time maybe to read them and take heed of them.
Or perhaps we don't want to see them as well.
That's right.
Yeah. I think
really
sometimes
true.
we can go around blinkered and think
it helps to go around blinkered, right? If you're really focused on a certain goal. And I guess, part of my own change in perspective that happened during the pandemic and spending more time alone, I think is this whole kind of acceptance. It's a very Japanese way of being as well. I was living out in Japan, so it's about just sort of accepting the beauty of in the moment, and sort of being grounded in the moment that you're in more comfortably than always yearning for something different.
I mean, we've talked a lot about things that sound quite depressing, but they're not always. And actually, I just want to say, if people haven't heard your music, there's a lot of this album that's very joyous. Yeah. Is that...
the album opens up with a song called Campfire that's likening the sunrise to a campfire that we all gather around for warmth, and singing simple songs to discard our worries. And there's a lot of lightness in my shows as well. People on this, I'm going on tour, starts next Wednesday in Totnes, the 13th, and the set is fun packed, Graham. There's opportunity for dancing, interaction, hand clapping. Yeah, it's a laugh a minute.
But as an album,
this
is a journey.
It is, yeah. From the opening song Campfire, where we're welcoming the sunrise together, to New Love at the close of the record, which is that just came out today.
Yep.
And that's a kind of 80s pop record. There's a lot of do you remember when the pandemic first hit and people were kind of sharing playlists of their favorite songs from their youth and so forth?
Yeah.
And we were talking a lot about nights out from decades past, and because we weren't having any new nights out, and it's about those kind of dreams and that sort of longing for home and that sort of warm, nostalgic glow.
It was definitely a time of nostalgia. I mean, I think one of the things that sort of really pushed that as well was the fact that TV became a bit odd, didn't it? Because I say a bit odd because what happened was that certain things couldn't be filmed.
Yeah.
So they had to revert back to older material. And as things went on, there was almost a feeling like, well, I certainly felt it was, what happens if we can never film that again? Actually, we'll be kind of gonna, there's a whole album there. Actually, I reckon someone could write a whole album about it. But what happens if tomorrow we can't record anything new? what happens if we just live with what we've got in the can, as it were, and we just recycle that? It's great. I'm sure for ages we'd actually have a lot of fun with that, and it would be very nostalgic and it'd be good. But it would get to a point where we'd go, want the next thing now, and it's not coming out. So, you know.
Yeah, and people are creative, aren't they? People are making things every second, as I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah, and partly I think that really pushed the creative button on certain art forms during the pandemic as well. People taking previous, it's always been done. Everyone's always sort of created art out of previous art, but that kind of started pushing to a whole new level, especially on things like TikTok and other things like that as well. People were sort of like, let's take what already exists over there and let's rework it, let's reframe it, and let's put it out again as another piece of art, you know. And same with music. I was hearing a lot of people sort of go back and like remix work, and partly through time as well, because people had more time to revisit what they'd done rather than move necessarily onto the next project as well. So there was a lot of sort of, let's go back and see whether we can do something else with that.
Yeah, you could address your wish list, those tasks that had been put as a low priority, or that I was given funding by the Arts Council England to do a project called Voices from the Cones, where that was something that was in existence before. That was 2019. I did it as a theatre show. But then in 2020 and 21, I was given this grant to make it into an album, which was a really wonderful project for those times, because the songs were already written. This was just a case of rearranging, producing, recording the parts. And I did that in collaboration with a Swedish producer, Gustaf Lundgren. And that's coming out in September this year. We're playing at the site of the ex-glass factory near to here in Stourbridge, where they've actually been making glass on site for 400 years. But the glass factory closed in the 90s. And this record's all about the loss of the factory to the community and the stories that came from the archive of interview footage that was taken at the time with all the ex-glass workers.
Wow. For anyone that hasn't, so you're in near the Stourbridge area, are you?
I'm just 10 miles away.
Yeah. For anyone that hasn't been there, it's lovely. So, there we go. So the album is coming out 22nd.
Yeah.
And where can people get that? Because
Dan
the best thing is to
hyphen-
actually buy it, right? Not just download it. Or
yeah,
stream
you can buy it right now. It's on Bandcamp. If you search Dan Whitehouse on Bandcamp, you can order the vinyl or the CD and the download.
Yeah. Oh, well, of course, the obvious choice for everyone that listens to this program is vinyl, because you know, it's bigger, right? No other reason, but it's bigger, and you can put it on a record player, and it just feels good and it looks good as well. Have you spent much time in terms of how that looks?
Oh, it's beautiful. We've got artwork designed by Martin D. Hyde, an abstract painter from Derbyshire, and it's transparent blue vinyl because it's called the Glass Age. Of course, it had to be glass.
What, you would not do anything but?
That's right.
No, you see, there you go. So look, you can buy this as a download, which, I mean, do that as well anyway. But do order the vinyl version of it, because it looks lovely. It's had a lot of care and attention put upon it, and also it's something to bring out at a party and show your friends. I mean, that's really what that's all about. And then they can download or buy their own version as well once they've seen how beautiful it is, and buy a second version of it and just hang it on the wall. And I say this because I do think it's really important for people to realise just how important it is to musicians for music to actually be brought. You know, not because and actually a lot of musicians really struggle with that because they're like, yeah, but I'm going to do it anyway, and music's music's might just I'm going to produce the music no matter what. So I just feel that I'm in a position to say that on their behalf.
No, it's good that you say that. It's good that it's acknowledged.
Yeah,
it has a value, doesn't it?
Of course it does. Of course it does. I mean, the thing is, so many people struggle with that. I mean, this isn't just a phenomenon that's down to musicians. So many people struggle with that, I think, in the kind of digital age, which is that, how much is your, what it is that you do worth? Because there's maybe a digital way of doing it or a sort of quick way of doing it that's, where people go, yeah, but I can get it like that, or I can do it like this. And, if we all do that, we just dilute society, right?
Yeah, and it's just like the language you just use, like, it's true, isn't it? You can get it, but can you experience it?
Yeah. The answer is no. Yeah.
Coming to a show or sitting down and with the vinyl with your friends, as you described, and having a drink and listening to the vinyl, it's a completely different experience to just sort of grabbing the download.
And if you're a youngster out there and you've never done that, you haven't done that whole experience yet. We are a generation that grew up with it. It's lovely. It's a lovely thing. But invite people over to your house, and rather than just have music on in the background, shout at the black dot in the corner just to pick stuff to throw at you all evening. Actually take the time to listen to something all the way through, and actually share and go, I'm bringing this to you because this means something to me. That's the bit I think that makes the big difference, don't you? I think it's the fact that when we were growing up and we were doing that, it was the shared experience of going, do you know what, this is precious to me, this really means something emotionally to me, and now I'm sharing it with you, and I'm actually sharing something about myself as well at the same time, because
we're getting back to what we were talking about before, about how through other people's stories you express your own through those records.
So it's not it's not just about showing off your clear vinyl. It's there's an emotional element to it too. Dan, it's been a pleasure meeting you, my friend. Good luck with the tour. Are you coming anywhere near Exeter? You said Totnes, which is obviously a little bit further south from me. Are you coming anywhere sort of Exeter, Bristol way?
I played at Bristol St George's last November, and it was nice, and I'd love to go back there. I'm sure I will at some point.
That's a nice venue because it's a converted Baptist church.
Yeah,
it's got very nice acoustics.
They've got a new room there called the Glass House or something like that.
Oh, that's perfect then, isn't it?
Yeah, that's where we played.
Yeah. Union Chapel would be the one that for me, that would be one to really aim for, wouldn't it? Because have you ever been there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dustin O'Hanlon there.
Yeah, special, isn't it? Very, very special.
Beautiful, yeah.
My friend, thank you for joining me. Do go and check out Dan Whitehouse. The album coming out on the 22nd. And buy it. Spend some money. Until next time. Bye for now, everybody.
Bye-bye.